Hi, this is Aaron Wilson for HeadsUpSetAndGo.com. Today I'm going to be going over some interesting hands versus strong regs. Most of my decisions will be based on how I think they play certain spots and what I think they think my range is. Most of the hands here will be against 60 and 100 turbo regs, and I also included some hands against some hyper regs. So in this hand I 3-bet aces and our opponent 4-bets. Versus regs that do have bluffs in their 4-bet range this deep, I think we can flat call this as a trap. If we 5-bet here, we just rep so strong and we fold out all its bluffs. If we only also have a 5-bet all-in range and a folding range versus his 4-bets, I think our opponent can really exploit us by just clicking back our 3-bets. So I think it's good here just to have a calling range here with aces and kings. If his 4-bet bluff hands flop top pair or any kind of draw, we can stack those hands that would have just folded to a 5-bet pre. And if he does have jacks, queens or kings, I do expect us to still stack him in most boards, especially the low card ones. So with all that reasoning, I do just decide to flat. The flop comes jack high and I do check it to him. This is to capture the value of a c-bet, which he will do a very high percentage of the time here, as his range is mostly over pairs, ace high, and he still does have some bluffs that will need to continue barreling to win the hand. The only hand I'm really concerned with here would be top set or a set of nines, but that's really a very small part of his range, and it's not really something I'm going to be concerned with, as if I got the stacks all in pre-flop I would have lost the game anyway. But by playing it this way, I give him the chance to stack off light or value on himself if he does flop top pair. So my opponent c-bets here 210 and I just flat call, and the turn is an 8. Because I know my opponent is a smart reg here, I expect my range, after calling a 4-bet pre and calling a small continuation bet on the flop, to be mostly Broadway suited connected hands like king queen suited, jack queen suited. So when I do check it to him and he checks back, basically when he checks back I can eliminate a lot of his value range because it should bet the turn with the draws out there. If he has a hand like ace jack, a set or an overpair, and my range looks like jack queen, jack 10 suited, or even king queen for a gut shot to the nuts and overcards, he should bet that turn for protection and value, also with the pot so bloated. So the river is an ace, which is a great card for me, not because it improves my hand, but because it either improved his hand for value, which he 4-betted pre, hands like ace queen or ace king, or with his bluffs it's also the perfect card for him to bluff. So if I do check it to him and my value range in this spot does look like jack x and king queen, which have to fold to a bet anyway, so it's really tempting to lead that river. But after I thought through the hand and what his range looked like to me and how it will react to the river if I check it to him, I prefer checking than betting. So I do check it to him, expecting the shove from his value hands like ace queen and ace king and his bluffs. So I do check it to him and he shoves and I have an easy call, and he does show 8-7 off. So on the river I actually don't mind his play that much, just because my range does look like jack x at best, and the river is a bad card for me and should hit his perceived 4-bet range. Our villain knows that his 8s loses a large percentage of the time if it does go to showdown. I think king queen is the only hand that I can have in this spot that I could maybe play this way that he does beat at showdown. So by flatting our big pocket pairs to 4-bets pre, this is an example of how you can exploit regs with somewhat balanced 4-betting range ranges that do include bluffs. So in this hand we are facing a winning hyper rig. He min raises pre-flop and we defend king 2 suited. Flop is queen 4 queen and he c-bets 30 into 80. I expect him to be c-betting this flop with almost all of his air hands, so I do expect king high to be good here most of the time and do call. The turn is an ace and he barrels again. Basically, because he's a smart thinking reg, I expect my range on the flop to look like 4x, trips, or high card value hands like ace and king high. So I do expect his ace x hands to check this turn, as he's just bloating the pot and value owning himself the times I can have queen x here. He'll also hate his life if he gets check raised on the turn. So I expect ace x to check turn and value river if I check it to him and get value from my 4x. So when he bets the turn again, I expect his range to be trips or complete air. So I do call again. The river is a good card for me as it's less likely now he does have queen x. I check it to him and he shoves all in. Because this river really doesn't change anything, if I thought it was good on the turn and I expect him to still have a lot of air in his range, I make the call with king high, which turns out to be good. So in this hand I min raise 10-9. You could limp it, but I did decide to min raise as this player had been isolating my limps a lot. He does call and the flop is ace 4-4. Basically I do expect this reg to 3-bet jam his ace x hands over a min raise at 16 big blinds. So when I do c-bet here and he check raises to 90, in my opinion he reps very little value, but hands like 4-5 suited. So because I am getting 5-1 on a call, if he's bluffing and I flat here, I expect him to shut down a lot with his bluffs, as my hand will look like ace x to continue. This is only a play I would recommend versus players that are check raising polarized and can shut down with bluffs when called. So on the turn when he does check it to me, I can just take the play away from him, making a flop float very profitable. This is a hand versus a 60s hyper rig. He limps in and effective stack sizes are just under 10 big blinds. I check back 10-9 here. I don't jam here as I don't expect him to call with worse. The flop is queen ace 9, so I flop bottom pair and my opponent stabs. I expect him to limp stab almost all of his air on this flop, so with that reason I do make the call, as I do expect to be ahead a high percentage of the time here. The turn is a king, and again our opponent's a player that knows my range in this spot is 9x or best or rag queen. So he knows that the ace on the flop and the king on the turn is bad for my range here, because it's capped at those hands. I do expect him to put a lot of pressure on me by double barreling and sometimes triple barreling me when my range is capped, especially when overcards come, which he thinks are scare cards for me. So on the turn I do decide to call, and the river is a blank. I check it to him and he shoves for 295 chips. So I need to be right here around 30% of the time to call. So work that out. You divide the amount to call into the total size of the pot if you do call. So that will be 295 divided by 990, which is just under 30%. Because this is a rig that understands my range is pretty weak, and I'm probably bluff catching here, and because I also do expect most of his Ace X and King X hands to just open shove pre, so that does eliminate a lot of his value range that he is repping here. I think I am good enough of the time to make the call. In this hand I'm in raise Queen 9 and our opponent does call. On the flop I do decide to check this back. Because we are bloating the pot the times that he does check raise us for value, but mainly because it's hard for us to get the showdown the times he is check raising air and barreling off. So on the turn when he leads here, it's much easier and cheaper for us to get to the river by checking the flop and calling this turn probe than c-betting flop and calling a check raise and a turn barrel. The river brings an 8, so on the river he does bet 150. So we only have to be right here 25% of the time to call. I am confident he will have some bluffs in his range here, but based on his sizing I also don't think he's super strong. Because sometimes I think he does have a slightly better hand than me with King X and Jack X, I actually decide to shove because I think those hands are bet folding the river. Against a good thinking reg, I think he will realize that I can't really have air by the river and shouldn't expect me to turn my pair into a bluff. With that going through his head, he will try and figure out what I can have in my value range to play this way and shove the river, and I think he will put it together that I can play the nuts like this. If I had a hand here like Ace 2 of Hearts, I think it's very credible I can check back bottom pair on the flop. On the turn I have to continue because I turn the nut flush draw with a pair, and on the river I would river the nuts. I think he will put it together that this is most likely my value range to play my hand this way and shove the river. I expect my 9x to be good some percentage of the time, but lose to King X and Jack X some percentage of the time also. But because I do know that this reg is very good and is able to understand the story that I am telling him, and also be capable of bet folding King and Jack X here, I do expect this play to be more profitable than just calling the river.